こんにちは。
你好。Bonsoir. Salut. Ciao. Zdravo.
Salut. Bună ziua. Sau bună. Hello, Jumbo.
Hi guys, if you haven't guessed by the intro, today we'll be talking about languages, and specifically how your language affects your singing voice.
So a lot of people have told me that my voice changes every time I speak Japanese. I'm going to test that out right now by saying a few phrases in English and then in Japanese. My name is Maya Larry. 私の名前はラリーマイヤです。I love you. 愛してます。You. You.
Did you hear that? That was a pretty dramatic change. She wasn't singing, sure, but the change in her voice just from speaking alone was pretty big. Hey guys, my name is Julia. You're watching The MCs, music at the core of everything. And today we're asking, can singing in a different language change or affect your voice? Let's find out. So my first instinct is, yeah, your language has to affect your voice. Some would say language is one half of what makes up your voice, your sound. The other half being your timbre. See, every language contains phonetics unique to that language. The natural tone and the phonetics is, for all intents and purposes, your voice. American English usually happens at the back of the throat. So when Americans speak, you kind of hear like a bit of a gravelly kind of that sort of thing. Some people do it a bit to more of an extent. Actually sidebar, maybe I shouldn't say. Oh, I won't say her name. I went to school with this girl who, she just vocal fried the whole time she talks. So vocal frying is, that sort of thing. And it's not good for you to do that a lot because it will affect your voice and your vocal cords. But she would just talk like this all the time. And that's, that's American English. Really happens back there. Now, British English is a bit more forward and a little bit more high-pitched because their voice is placed a little bit higher, more forward. So I'm not really good at doing a British accent, but I'll do my best. Here we go. Harry Potter. Oh man, I even did it American at the end. Harry Potter. Harry Potter. Harry Potter. Harry. So you could just tell when I was trying to do the British accent that my voice was pitched a little bit higher, and they're just, I would say, more articulate. They enunciate a bit more when they're speaking, and American English is just a little more casual where like our voice is just so relaxed that it just sits back here most of the time, Now imagine taking this further to an entirely different language, say Mandarin, which the tone at the beginning and end of the word or sentence or syllable that you're saying affects the entire meaning of what you say.
很重要的一部分，虽然说我现在东北话应该讲的不是很纯正。
You go up, if you go down. I actually had some Chinese friends who were trying to direct me how to say a phrase in Mandarin Chinese, and I fucked that up. I think I ended up saying something about an ass or like, it was just not good. I was trying to say something like, hi, my name is, and it ended up being something very inappropriate because the inflection up or down wasn't right. And it completely changed the meaning of what I was trying to say. Now, when inflection actually changes the meaning of a word, that kind of changes the whole concept of singing for an English speaker. And we're asking, does language affect your singing voice? I'd say, yeah, just a bit. Tongue position. Tongue position. Now I'm like, tongue position. Tongue. Okay, shut up. Tongue position. So tongue position is actually really important in Mandarin. So in Mandarin, the tongue is either placed in the front of your mouth towards your bottom teeth. In Hindi, completely different again. And you get the picture. Tongue positions change from language to language. I mean, in some African languages, There are cliques in the language. I actually had a friend back in my master's who was from South Africa, and he knew how to speak like a myriad of languages. And some of them were Afrikaans and isiXhosa. Oof, I think I did it. But that's one of the clicking languages. And I don't understand how you sing while you also have clicking noises, because it stops a sound. So that seems incredibly difficult, from coming from an English speaker perspective. I don't know how they do that. And speaking of clicks, while we're here, let's talk about voicing. Not the objective voice indicating timbre, which is produced via the mechanics of creating vocal sound. Voicing, on the other hand, is the rhythm and the flow of the language. And that language informs the sound and the composition of that music, the vocal music and instrumental music of that culture. So back in undergrad, I took an intercultural music course. It was like music of the world or world music, something like that. Some of my favorite music to listen to in that class was music from Azerbaijan, which is a Middle Eastern country, especially the vocal music. The way that their language is placed is kind of further back, like English, American English, but they had a lot of kind of sound that you also have in German. That would create a really rich, warm, kind of husky sound, really dramatic, really kind of raw and emotional. In Chinese music, they have instruments that have like semitones, and I think even smaller. It was like a bending of the sound that created a really, really cool effect. But you don't hear that in Western music. That's just not part of our style. It's not part of our basic foundation for our music. Sidebar, I know this is a long talking a lot about this, but when you take music theory, you have to stick to those rules so rigidly that sometimes it's like, man, if I don't know all the rules, then I can't create good music. But then realizing that only Western music has these rules. There are other rules for different cultures of music. So really, doesn't that mean that there are no rules? The rules! You can create any kind of music you want. It could sound like anything because all the rules are different. I thought that was kind of cool. Anyway, moving on. Basically, a language will not only change your voice, but your voice, thanks to muscle memory, will also change that language. Allow me to refer you to this peer-reviewed scientific journal, Frontiers in Psychology. Neural evidence seems to support the view that resources between language and music are shared. Bidirectional effect. So that means the influence goes both ways. Your voice and your language are connected, and they affect each other. Frankly, on a deeper level than we can get into in the time that this video would allow, or my producer would allow. Oh, my little sleeping doggy is here with me on the bed. He's so cute. He wants me to play with her. He says I'm boring. Anyway, here comes the switch. I'm pretty sure most of you have heard this before. Singers often lose their accent when singing. We're not really talking about the voice or the language, we're talking about technique. That's it. Trying to separate the voice from the spoken language as if they're two separate things is like trying to separate a musical instrument from the sound that it makes. You just can't do it. If you can make a saxophone squeal like a pig, that's only because the saxophone has the capability to squeal like a pig if the player has the right technique. The voice of the instrument hasn't changed. It's merely been informed by the technique of the musician. The musician who doesn't have the technique required to get that nice, juicy, loud, last exit bona fide squeal on their sax would listen to another player and think that the voicing or the voice of the saxophone had changed. The saxophone hasn't changed its voice any more than if you changed the note from A to B flat. The only difference now becomes the technique, wittingly or unwittingly applied by the performer. Now that could end it. We could start scrolling right now and go away knowing we either learned something new or gained greater insight thanks to a hopefully entertaining video. But since you're still here, I'm going to take the liberty to assume you wouldn't object in me taking another 5 minutes to literally blow your freaking mind. Music was the first language, and the voice was the first instrument. Like, ever. The question isn't, how does singing in another language change your voice? The question is music just another form of audible language? Or is audible language just in itself another form of music? You weren't ready for that. Let's talk about ants and gorillas.
Say what?
It's as good a place to start as any. So ants communicate through chemistry. No sounds, no clicks. They can find food. They know their individual jobs in the colony. They can dispatch armies, raise babies, and even plan and move an entire colony hundreds of yards from where it started, all through chemical communication. Gorillas? Well, they grunt. High-pitched, low-pitched, 2 or 3 grunts indicating patterns, and combining them to create context and direct meaning. We are not ants. We're primates.
It was at this moment that she knew. She f***ed up.
All that I just described is the literal definition of music. In an interview with Russell Torrance in 2018, Anita Collins said this.
Babies have a music processing network that they're born with that helps them to then learn how to speak and then how to read. What we now know, what a lot of this research has done is looked at kids, in really challenging circumstances, because they've seen that there's something about learning music which is sort of changing their brains, because their brains literally are not as well developed as they could be. And this is why we see academically that those kids really struggle at school and continue to struggle. It's because in the first sort of wiring of their brain, it isn't sort of set up as effectively as it could be. But when they have music programs in schools, it seems to take care or improve some of these areas that aren't as well developed, one of which is auditory processing. And auditory processing is how we learn language.
So processing sound.
Processing sound, yeah. And one of the most interesting things is that sound is our most dominant sense, but we don't think it is. Language development. So the connection between music and language is automatic. So when we use music to learn language, and the more we learn music, the better and quicker our language will develop.
Do you get that? Let's just start with the fact that sound is our most dominant sense. Music, as we like to think about the brain, is absolutely no different from language. Darwin knew this. All the years of the ancients studying music as a physical science, they never thought once that maybe the field of science it belonged to may have been biology the whole time. That meant there was absolutely little to no neuroscience weekly studies, experiments, or research of any kind on something that he figured out through observation after years of studying the evolution of species. Music and languages are connected. They come from the same place, and they perform the same functions, both literally as a communicator and as a way to better understand one's own self. So, what's the point? 5 minutes or so ago, I asked, is audible language just another form of music? Music was the first language, and voice was the first instrument. Seems to me the harder question is, are they one and the same? And just in case your brain doesn't hurt enough just yet, why do I keep saying audible language? Well, that's because the next logical question that this rabbit hole takes us to is painting and drawing just another form of visual language like writing and reading? Or is writing just another form of visual art? What's sign language to its direct comparison? Dance? Physical art? Physical language? Are they also one and the same? Now, these are the questions worth asking, and quite frankly, I don't have the answers. Do you? Leave it in the comments section. I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this one. If this made you think and you like when that happens, press the subscribe button and hit the bell notification so you get notified for every upload. And hit that like button. It's free. My name's Julia, and you've been watching The MCs, music at the core of everything. And as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.